Good morning, you are watching A News. I'm Bakhtiar Sanova, and here are the top stories. Trump says he may meet Putin this month and dismisses Ukraine concerns. Fierce clashes continue in Khartoum as Sudan faces escalating humanitarian crisis and political deadlock. Pope diagnosed with pneumonia in both lungs, Vatican confirms. U.S. President Donald Trump says he may meet Russian President Vladimir Putin this month. At a press conference, Trump responded probably when asked if he still expected to meet Putin before the end of this month. His remarks followed U.S. and Russia discussions on Ukraine in Riyadh on Monday. Trump dismissed Ukraine's concerns about being left out of the talks in Saudi Arabia. However, he criticizes Kiev for being unable to reach an agreement with Moscow in the last 3 years. Trump added he would not oppose European nations sending peacekeepers to Ukraine.
And I'm very disappointed. I hear that, they're upset about not having a seat. Well, they've had a seat for 3 years and a long time before that. This could have been settled very easily. Just a half-baked negotiator could have settled this years ago without the loss of much land, very little land, without the loss of any lives, and without the loss of cities that are just laying on their side.
Sir, do you support stationing European peacekeeping troops in Ukraine as part of this peace deal?
If they want to do that, that's great. I'm all for it. If they want to do that, I think that'd be fine.
Even if the Russians are...
I mean, I know France has mentioned it. Others have mentioned it. UK has mentioned it. But if we have a peace deal, I think having troops over there from the standpoint of Europe, we won't have to put any over there because, we're very far away. But having troops over there would be fine. I would not object to it at all.
The first U.S.-Russia talks on Ukraine finished in Riyadh after 4.5 hours. The U.S. State Department announced that Washington and Moscow will appoint teams to negotiate ending the Ukraine war.
In Riyadh, US and Russian officials concluded their first round of talks aimed at ending the war in Ukraine. The discussions, lasting over 4 hours, were led by US Secretary of State Marco Rubio, National Security Advisor Mike Waltz, and Special Envoy Steve Witkoff, alongside Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov and Kremlin's Foreign Affairs Advisor Yuri Ushakov. A key outcome of the talks was an agreement to establish high-level teams from both sides to begin working on a path toward peace. US State Department spokesperson Tammy Bruce confirmed that both the US and Russia committed to appointing representatives to lead negotiations focused on a sustainable, enduring and acceptable solution to the conflict.
Today is the first step of a long and difficult journey, but an important one. And President Trump is committed to bringing an end to this conflict, and as he said when he campaigned for president. And he wants it to end in a way that's fair. He wants it to end in a way that's sustainable and enduring, not that leads to another conflict in 2 to 3 years. That's not going to be easy to achieve, but he's the only one in the world that can begin that process. Donald Trump is the only leader in the world that could initiate that process, and today was the first step in that process.
In addition to the peace talks, both sides agreed to work on resolving long-standing diplomatic barriers that have hindered communication. Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov stated that the US and Russia had agreed to prioritize the appointment of ambassadors to each country as soon as possible. Lavrov also mentioned that there was agreement on easing restrictions on the operations of diplomatic missions, particularly those imposed during the previous US administration.
These are the agreements that we reached. The first one, and probably the most urgent, and moreover, and not so difficult, is to ensure that the ambassadors of Russia to the United States and the United States to Russia are appointed as soon as possible. Secondly, to remove the handicaps that for many years, above all during the Biden administration over the past 4 years, have been imposed on our diplomatic missions, seriously hampering their work.
While the talks were ongoing, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky was in Ankara, meeting with Turkish President Tayyip Erdogan. Zelensky continues to stress that Ukraine must be involved in any peace process, declaring that no peace can be made without its participation.
Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky criticized the meeting in Riyadh between the United States and Russian delegations as talks about Ukraine without Ukraine. Speaking after a meeting with Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan in Ankara, Zelensky said that it's fundamentally important that no talks on the end of the war happen behind the backs of the parties involved. He stressed that the negotiating table must represent all parties, America, Europe and Ukraine. Erdogan said that Turkey supports the full territorial integrity of Ukraine and that his country is an ideal place for negotiations between Russia, Ukraine and the United States.
Можете обговорювати що завгодно, але не можна приймати рішення без України, як завершити.
You can talk about anything, but no decision can be made without Ukraine on how to end the war in Ukraine.
Запрошували на цю зустріч.
We were not invited to this meeting, the US-Russia meeting in Saudi Arabia. It was a surprise for us, as well as for many.
Для багатьох.
Son 3 yılda izlediğimiz aktif diplomasi dikkate alındığında Rusya ile Ukrayna
Considering the active diplomacy we have pursued over the last 3 years, our country will be an ideal host for the talks that will likely be held between Russia, Ukraine and the US in the coming period. In my meeting with Mr. Zelensky, I expressed our strong support for Ukraine's territorial integrity, sovereignty and independence.
ve bağımsızlığına olan kuvvetli desteğini ifade
Germany heads to the polls this Sunday after a brief but intense election campaign dominated by debates on immigration, security and economic challenges. With just days to go, public discontent is being shown through protests, economic concerns and growing calls for change.
Germans have been voicing their frustrations and concerns ahead of the federal election on February the 23rd. Right now, faith in the government is at its lowest point in over a decade, having fallen to 50% in 2024, according to Gallup's poll. Over the weekend, Munich saw a massive demonstration with 200,000 people protesting against the far-right Alternative for Germany party and its migration policies. Economic concerns are also a major worry. Many Germans are frustrated with the ruling traffic light coalition with the Social Democrats, Greens and Liberals. In Bavaria, farmers worry that any change in policies will put their livelihoods at risk.
We've made investments that will take 20 to 30 years to pay off, and it just isn't sustainable that everything is then suddenly different every 5 years, referring to elections. There is no carpentry business, dairy business, no agricultural business that can survive this. This has to stop, and we need to get rid of this bureaucracy.
The growing economic divide is another concern as more people rely on food banks. Last year, there were 975 of them in the country, according to Statista.
What I would like from the next election is that the gap between rich and poor is narrowed, that the people who come to us get more help and relief, and in an ideal world that we wouldn't be needed anymore.
Living standards have reduced in Germany, according to Gallup, which says the percentage of people who say their situation is improving dropped sharply from 42% in 2023 to 27% last year. The poll also shows that at a time of global uncertainty and regional turmoil, Germany's standing in Europe is slipping. The choice voters make on Sunday will shape the country's future, influencing its leadership and direction for years to come.
Hamas says it will release 6 living hostages on Saturday and 4 deceased on Thursday. It's after Israel and Hamas have begun indirect negotiations of the second stage of the ceasefire deal, aimed at releasing the remaining 64 hostages. This next phase is being mediated by Egypt and Qatar in Cairo.
Israel and Hamas have begun a new phase of indirect negotiations after a Cairo-brokered ceasefire deal facilitated by Egypt and Qatar. This agreement includes the release of 6 living and 8 deceased hostages in the coming days, as well as the release of Palestinian prisoners in Israel. This new phase will take place in 3 stages. On Thursday, 4 deceased hostages will be handed over by Hamas, followed by 4 more next week. On Saturday, 6 of the remaining live hostages will get to return to their families. Officials have not yet disclosed the names of those who've died who are set to return. Among those to be released on Saturday alive will Elia Cohen, Tal Shoham, Omer Shemtov and Omer Wenkat, who were taken during the October 7th attack, and Hisham al-Sayed and Avera Mengistu, who crossed over into Gaza independently of each other around a decade ago and have been held since then.
My brother Elia Cohen is kidnapped from the party in the 7th of October, and we really miss him.
We need more efforts to bring them back alive. Returning hostages in coffins is not a victory.
For months, families have been calling on Israeli leaders to intensify negotiations. Many have also appealed to the international community for support.
All the leaders need to take act. They need to do more pressure on the other countries and more pressure on Egypt and Qatar and the US to build a satisfaction agreement to take all the hostages out.
We're dealing with a very cruel enemy, and we shouldn't leave anyone behind in Gaza. This is for sure. This is everybody in Israel understand.
The first phase of hostage releases in November 2023 returned dozens of people, but many, like 40-year-old Tal Shoham, remain in captivity. His family is still waiting for news.
My father was murdered here. Nothing that I can do will change that. For the rest of my life, this tragedy will be with me. But we can save Tal, and we can save so many of the hostages.
His kids and his wife and the parents and the whole family is waiting for him to be home, safe and alive.
So far, 19 Israeli hostages have been returned in exchange for the release of hundreds of Palestinian prisoners and detainees. Continued negotiations are expected to be tough because they include issues such as the administration of post-war Gaza, where there are large gaps between the sides.
Palestinian business owners in the Jabalia refugee camp struggle to revive their daily activities in the harsh conditions. However, despite these challenges, some business owners share a common hope for peace and stability.
Despite the destruction in northern Gaza, Palestinian business owners in the Jabalia refugee camp are doing their best to rebuild and revive their daily activities. From restaurants to bakeries, entrepreneurs are facing immense challenges, yet they remain determined to continue their work.
The place where we are, as you see, I used to have a floor here and a floor upstairs. We had 200 tables. From 200 tables, only one table remained, and here it is broken. We only have this one. I had 12 workers. Today I'm alone at this place because the work became bad. People have no money. They spent all their money.
As businesses continue to struggle, local workers are also doing their best to adapt.
Today the work takes time, costs, wood. We did not use wood and we did not know how to use it. The war taught us how to use it. Everything was operated by gas and everything was organized.
The water desalination plant, which was a crucial lifeline for the camp, has also suffered heavy damage.
Before the war, water produced from the plant reached 25 cubic meters per hour. Today, it produces only 15 cubic meters due to the destruction and lack of electricity, also lack of material for the plant. We cannot source them.
In the face of these challenges, all the business owners share a common hope, peace and stability.
We don't want a truce. What are we going to do with a truce? We want the war to end and peace and security to prevail for us and our neighbours, no matter how it costs. This is what I want, peace and security. That's it. I only want this. We shall put our hands together and rebuild this country.
Amid the destruction, the people of Jabalia remain determined to persevere. Their resilience reflects a collective hope that one day the community will heal and recover.
To Sudan, where fierce fighting continues in the capital Khartoum between the Sudanese armed forces and the paramilitary rapid support forces amid a deteriorating humanitarian crisis and the deadlocked political scene. Naba Muhiddin reports from Port Sudan.
The Sudanese military is gaining control of new grounds in the capital Khartoum, in the twin city of Omdurman, Bahri, and also in Khartoum, the triangle capital. Since September, fierce clashes have been reported between the Sudanese army and the RSF, especially in Khartoum and northern Khartoum, Bahri. And since January 8th, the Sudanese military gained control of Wad Madani city, which is the second biggest city after Khartoum in Al Jazeera state in central Sudan. And also the military regained control of key locations in the capital, including the military headquarters and some military camps, which was besieged by the RSF for almost 2 years. As the two warring parties are confronting in the capital Khartoum, some atrocities are reported, especially from the RSF, which is allegedly targeting civilians and civilian infrastructure, including hospitals, health facilities, and public markets. Just in the past 2 days, 200 civilians were reported to be killed by emergency law group in White Nile state. The paramilitary forces lost some grounds in Al Jazeera, in Darfur, and in Khartoum, so they are trying to penetrate towards White Nile state to open a new fighting front for them there, and to also to control main cities like Al Ghitana and some cities in White Nile state. The humanitarian situation is reported to be deteriorating in the capital due to the confrontation between the warring parties, but people are so optimistic, and actually some civilians already packed their bags and they are returning home to Al Jazeera state in Wad Madani and also to Khartoum, feeling that the relative calm situation after the military recontrolled Bahri city and Omdurman city, but the situation is still worrying for monitors and for international community, which of course call for ending the hostilities and ending besieging main cities like Khartoum and Al Fashir. For any news, Naba Muhiddin in Port Sudan.
Turkey hosted the first round of technical negotiations between Somalia and Ethiopia towards resolving their dispute. The event focused on regional cooperation for stability and prosperity in the Horn of Africa. Turkey's foreign ministry says the row was sparked by a deal between the two countries' breakaway region of Somaliland. Last December, the leaders of the two countries met in Turkey and agreed to discuss a potential agreement that upholds Somalia's territorial integrity while allowing Ethiopia access to the sea. While Turkey has its largest overseas military base in Somalia, the foreign ministry says it sees an historic opportunity to transform challenges into opportunities. Turkey's solar power capacity surpassed 20,000 megawatts, reaching 20,400 megawatts on Sunday. This is a 39% increase from the same period last year, according to data from the Energy and Natural Resources Ministry. Turkey's solar energy capacity has exceeded 20,400 megawatts with the launch of rooftop, field, and hybrid power plants. Solar power plants now rank as the second largest renewable energy source after hydroelectric plants, accounting for 17.5% of Turkey's total installed capacity, a significant increase from 13.8% recorded on February 16th last year. The country aims to expand its solar and wind energy capacity to 120,000 megawatts by 2035. To meet this target, it will need to add 4,000 to 5,000 megawatts of solar capacity annually, alongside other capacity enhancements. Currently, electricity produced from solar energy costs 50% less than electricity generated from coal and natural gas. Despite its lower cost, the main challenge of solar energy is that electricity production stops without sunlight.
Starting in 2026, the commissioning of storage-based solar power plants will allow continuity in electricity generation from solar energy.
Kazakhstan's city of Almaty will launch new flights to China in 2025 to boost tourism. An agreement with Air China will add more flights to Beijing and the new route to Chengdu. Kazakhstan hopes this will strengthen tourism and economic ties with China. Fariza Kalimurzina reports from Almaty.
Almaty is set to strengthen its air connectivity with China by introducing additional flights starting in 2025. During a recent working visit to China, Almaty Mayor Yerbolat Dosaev signed a memorandum with Air China to facilitate the launch of new routes between the two countries. The agreement includes extra flights on the Almaty-Beijing route expected to begin in June this year, as well as a new direct flight connecting Almaty and Chengdu. Currently, Almaty offers direct flights to 5 cities in China. This move is part of a broader initiative to boost tourism between Kazakhstan and China. The year 2024 was declared the Year of Tourism of Kazakhstan and China. According to the Kazakh Ministry of Tourism and Sport, over 600,000 Chinese tourists visited Kazakhstan last year, marking a 78% increase compared to 2023. In 2025, Kazakhstan will focus not only on attracting tourists, but also on strengthening cultural and economic exchange with China. The government aims to generate approximately $300 million in tourism-related revenue and attract around 500,000 Chinese visitors. A comprehensive action plan, including 37 cultural and business events, has been approved to promote Kazakhstan in the Chinese market and deepen collaboration with Chinese tourism companies. As a result, Kazakhstan has climbed from 40th to 29th place in the rankings of popular destinations for Chinese tourists. According to Daniel Serjanolo, deputy chairman of the National Kazakh Tourism Company, Kazakhstan could potentially receive at least 1 million Chinese visitors per year. However, he emphasized that the infrastructure in the cities is still adapting to accommodate the growing number of Chinese tourists. But signposts in Chinese language have already been introduced at airports in major cities to assist visitors. Astana is optimistic that the Year of Tourism will strengthen bilateral ties, opening new opportunities for cultural and business exchange. Cities like Turkestan and Aktau have also become increasingly popular among Chinese tourists, thanks to the visa-free regime introduced 2 years ago, more direct flights options and attractive promotion of Kazakhstan's tourism potential. From Almaty, Kazakhstan, Fariza Kalimurzina, A News.
Pope Francis has been diagnosed with double pneumonia, further complicating his treatment as he remains in Rome's Gemelli Hospital. The Vatican has not provided details on the duration of Francis' hospital stay.
The 88-year-old pontiff was admitted on February 14 after suffering from a respiratory infection for more than a week. A recent chest CT scan revealed bilateral pneumonia, an infection affecting both lungs that makes breathing difficult. The Vatican said the Pope is receiving additional pharmacological therapy, but remains in good spirits. Officials also confirmed he's breathing on his own and has not been placed on a ventilator. Pope Francis has been especially vulnerable to lung infections since his youth, when he underwent surgery to remove part of one lung due to pleurisy. His condition prompted doctors to adjust his treatment for a second time, citing a polymicrobial infection of the respiratory tract, which involves multiple microorganisms and can be caused by bacteria, viruses, or fungi. Dozens of faithful prayed for Pope Francis' recovery outside Rome's Gemelli Hospital, where he remains under medical supervision. Many expressed their hopes for his swift recovery. Amid his health concerns, the Vatican has cancelled all public events on its schedule through Sunday, including key engagements for the 2025 Catholic Holy Year, which is expected to draw millions of pilgrims to Rome. The Vatican has not provided details on the duration of Francis' hospital stay, but said he will remain under medical supervision as long as necessary.
That's all for now. Stay tuned for more and have a wonderful morning.